Hello, Matador family. This is Dr. Gutierrez, your proud superintendent of schools. And I wanted to take some time to provide the Seguin ISD community with an update on COVID and our COVID protocols. Last night, the Board of Trustees held a special meeting to receive an update on current COVID protocols that are being practiced, as well as hear about proposed COVID protocols. And so what I am going to do through this video is provide you all an update on where we are with COVID. I want to start off by saying that these are very challenging times indeed that we're all living through. And it's a very challenging time to lead through as well as we continue to deal with COVID and the challenges that it presents to us as a school district and community. But I do want to share that my number one priority as the superintendent of Seguin ISD is to ensure the safety of every student and every staff member in our district. And unfortunately, we're living through times where many things seem to be a controversy. And what I am most proud of is the ability of our community to come together to support one another. And we have, as a school system, been able to avoid many of the disruptions to learning that we have seen happening in other systems, because as a community, we have been able to come together. During this presentation, which is the same presentation that was covered during last night's special meeting, we're going to talk about current COVID campus practices. We're going to discuss the current COVID cases that we are seeing in our schools, as well as the virtual learning opportunity that we are going to be able to offer to a limited number of students, and proposed thresholds, which are now not proposed, but thresholds we are going to be following moving forward beginning today. I'm going to share my screen so that you all can see the presentation that I'm going to be sharing with you all. And the safety procedures that we're following are very similar to the ones that we were following last year that I feel very strongly made a significant difference in mitigating COVID in our schools and in our community. Our staff and students are strongly encouraged to wear a mask. Our classrooms, our buses, our facilities are frequently being cleaned. We're continuing to encourage our students to wash their hands regularly. We are encouraging our parents to send their students with water bottles to avoid utilizing our drinking fountains. We are using thermal temperature scanners in the entrances of our campuses that have the ability to scan dozens of students at a time to see if students are coming to school with the temperature. If a student walks into a building with the temperature, it sends an alert and a snapshot of that student to the office, either a secretary or an administrator, and they are able to immediately pull that student in to be assessed by our nurse. We are currently looking at purchasing air cleaning units to be placed in common areas in our campuses, such as a cafeteria, where our students do not wear a mask. And these cleaning units have the ability to clean the air. We'll also have the opportunity to place these in classrooms overnight when there are known cases of COVID that have been in those classrooms. So that is something that is going to be very different from last year. As far as district-wide guidelines, we have a campus designee who is making contact with the student's parent or staff member to determine the date and location of a positive lab test, any symptoms, date of symptom onset, and whether other students or staff have been exposed. What you are probably noticing is that we're not doing as extensive of contact tracing as we were doing last year, where students, if they were exposed to someone and they were with that person, alongside that person in close proximity for a period of 15 minutes, we would contact trace and make contact We do not have that ability to do that this year. We do not have the staff or resources to be able to contact trace that extensively. Last year, we were at the point of even identifying times when students would go to the restroom and going back and looking through that documentation to contact trace. Keep in mind that last year, we started the year with about 60% of our students learning remotely. So we were able to utilize staff to support us with that. But by the time we finished the school year, we were at upwards of 85% of our students learning face-to-face. And now we're at 100%. The campus nurse also then confirms with the campus principal or designee about the appropriate quarantine period for the positive student and staff. And to the best of our ability, communication will be provided to students and staff who may have come in contact with a positive student or staff member. Parents of direct contact students may choose whether or not they want their child to quarantine. Now, last year, we had dozens of students quarantined at a time. This year, what is different is that parents have that choice to determine whether or not they feel that they need to quarantine their student or not. What we do is report any student or staff member who has been on campus and tests positive for COVID. We must notify DSHS, the Department of Health for the state, as well as the Texas Education Agency. Schools are required to notify all teachers, staff, and families of all students in a classroom if a test confirmed COVID-19 case is identified among students, teachers, or staff. Many of you have been receiving that communication from your campuses because it is required by the state. What do the current COVID cases in our school district look like? Many of you monitor those numbers every single day. You have the ability to go to our COVID dashboard and see what the trends look like. Beginning yesterday, we changed how that dashboard looks. It is now live where you can actually see what the cases look like on a particular campus. For example, if you look at this chart, and it's going to look just like this on the Seguin ISD website, as a parent, you're able to go and look at, let's say, Jefferson Avenue Elementary. Right now, their percentage of positivity is 0.23%. So as a parent, you're able to make the decision and say, I feel pretty comfortable sending my child to school without a mask because there are little to no cases of COVID at that campus. But if you look at Barnes, and many of you have seen the mask alert that we've been communicating over the last several days, their positivity rate is almost at 4%. So as a parent, you have the ability to, along with us, monitor these COVID numbers every single day. And as a parent, you have a choice to determine whether or not you want to choose to send your child to school with or without a mask. Now, one of the interesting things that we have seen since we have been sending out those mask alerts and parents have been receiving notifications from Barnes Middle School is we are seeing more students coming to school wearing masks. We are seeing more staff wearing masks as well. So parents and the school working hand in hand to monitor these numbers. We put out alerts letting the community and parents know where that school stands through a mask alert, but now we will be changing that to what stage that campus is on, and I'll be sharing more about that shortly. And then make a decision as a parent whether you want to choose to send your student to school with a mask. And right now we've got Jim Barnes that is at the highest at 3.94%. And as you can see, there are campuses that have either no to 1 or 2 cases of COVID. This is live. This is updated every single day. So I do encourage you all to monitor this very closely so that you can help support us in ensuring that your child and our staff are safe every single day. One of the other topics that we did discuss with our board members last night was attendance, and I wanted to just be able to share some of the trends that we are seeing with attendance. Over the last several years, we had made significant gains with attendance because student attendance was an area that Seguin ISD struggled with for many, many years. And we had made significant progress with attendance. As you can see, after the third week of school back in 2019 and the 2019 and 2020 school year, we were over 96% attendance. Last year, we were dealing with COVID. That attendance rate was almost at 93%. This year, we're seeing attendance rates that are much lower, and we're averaging right now 90.13%. And these are trends that other school districts are also seeing. On Wednesday, I had the opportunity to meet virtually with Bexar County superintendents, all of the San Antonio superintendents, and we are all seeing these trends. Why? Well, one, we're seeing more COVID cases this year in comparison to last year. And we have more parents who are keeping kids at home because they are experiencing symptoms, and parents do not want to expose other students or staff. And so there is a big awareness of those COVID symptoms, and we believe that is why we are seeing lower attendance rates this year. But we do encourage our parents to please send kids to school every day on time if your students are healthy. So what is the impact of these lower attendance rates? Well, our funding is based on the number of kids that come to school. Last year, the overall attendance rate was at 93%, a decrease from the previous school year of 2019-2020. However, as a school system, we can request a waiver for low attendance to excuse instructional days from ADA and the foundation school program funding calculations if attendance, though, is at least 10 percentage points below the last school year's overall average. So we would have to be experiencing attendance rates in the very low 80s. So right now, we would not be able to apply for an attendance waiver. However, the Texas Education Agency has stated that they will look at attendance data after that first fall PEIMS submission in November and then determine whether or not they will provide financial support to districts, because we're all experiencing declines in attendance, but not only declines in attendance, we're experiencing overall a decrease in enrollment. Last year, our average enrollment throughout the school year was at about 6,800 or so, a loss of a few hundred students. That was the norm across Region 20, this area. Thankfully, we've seen an increase in enrollment, and as of today, we are at about 7,000 students. So that is going to help us a little bit because we do have 200 or so more students than we did last year. But our hope is that we continue to see more students coming back and feeling safe with the protocols that we are putting in place, because there have been a few students whose parents have opted to homeschool because of COVID concerns. So let's talk about the COVID data from last year and the COVID data from this year. So last year, in the entirety of the school year, we had 108 total staff cases and 238 total student cases in the entirety of last year, for a total of 346 cases. Today, we've not even completed the fourth week of school, and we have already matched where we were in overall COVID cases last year. So we have already hit 238 total COVID cases in the fourth week of the school year. And we have hit about 40 total staff cases in just the first 4 weeks of school. So that alone is very concerning. So what was the difference last year? Well, last year, we didn't have the Delta variant. We were able to mandate masks because it was mandated by the state during the entirety of the school year, except for the last few weeks when Governor Abbott lifted that mandate. And I do want to share that during those last few weeks of school, last school year, when that mask mandate was lifted, we started to see increases in student and staff cases of COVID. So I do believe that the masks have helped to mitigate COVID and to keep the numbers down. Another fact that I would like to share is that here at Central Administration, about 95% of the employees in this building wear masks, and we have not dealt with a COVID case in several months. I truly believe that the usage of masks has helped. Now, some might argue, well, many of you work in isolation and you're in offices. Well, that is not the case, because oftentimes we are working in small groups, either in large areas where we conduct meetings or in small conference rooms where we meet and are in close proximity. So we do believe that the masks are helping. We've also noticed that at campuses that have higher percentages of staff and student mask usage, that the COVID numbers have stayed down as well. So I want to remind our community that we are seeing many more COVID cases so far in comparison to last year. Virtual learning, and many of our parents have asked, are we going to offer virtual learning? Why can't we offer virtual learning like other districts have been able to? Well, we've not been able to offer virtual learning because the state has limited our ability to offer remote learning. However, during this last special legislative session, Senate Bill 15 was passed and was signed by the governor yesterday to allow school districts to offer virtual learning for a very small, limited number of students. And so I'm going to talk through how that would look for Seguin ISD. So you're limited in offering virtual learning to only 10% of your total enrollment. And I just shared that we have 7,000 students. So we are limited to offering virtual learning for only 700 students. However, the challenge is that you have to find the staff who can commit to 100% virtual teaching. A school district cannot use current staff who are teaching face-to-face to also teach virtual students like we were able to do last school year. So our hands are tied in that area. So what do you have to do as a school district? You have to hire more teachers to just teach virtual learning. Now, the job market for teachers is very, very challenging right now. It is hard to find just a second grade teacher when just a few years ago, you would have 10, 20, 30 applications for one second grade teaching job. Because of COVID, it is very hard to find a teacher in almost any teaching area. So we are very confident that we will not be able to find enough teachers to teach 700 students. But we are confident that we can, at a minimum, find 4 teachers to teach virtually 100%, which would equate to about 120 students. And we are only going to offer virtual learning to the elementary grades, kindergarten through 5th grade, because those grade levels do not have access to vaccinations. Students 12 and over have access to vaccinations. So we are only going to offer 2 elementary. So that is a maximum of 120 students. Now the state has put in place stringent guidelines for which students can participate in virtual learning. The student has to have been present more than 90% of the time during the last school year, must have had all A's or B's on their last school year's report card, must be reading at grade level as per our universal screener iStation, must have passed STAR if they took STAR last year, and may not have any out of school suspensions. So there are very strict criteria for students who can have parents who opt in to virtual learning. So you have to have passed STAR, but if you were in grade level that didn't have STAR, you have to have good grades, A's and B's, and you have to be on level as per iStation data. How is that virtual learning going to look? It will be a combination of synchronous and asynchronous learning. We will take this virtual learning plan to the board for approval at the end of this month during our regular board meeting. So there will be a combination of live instruction as well as independent student activities utilizing our instructional platforms. This will not be a short-term solution. Students who enroll in our virtual learning program will enroll for the entirety of the rest of this school year. This is not a program for when a campus or a classroom shuts down because of COVID. This is for these 120 identified students moving forward for the remainder of the year. Now, we may be able to offer it to more than 120 students, depending on the number of teacher applications that come and the ability to secure certified and qualified virtual learning teachers. Parents will be required to check progress daily, and we cannot, again, require a teacher who is currently teaching face-to-face to take on the additional responsibilities to teach online. We will be sending out additional information in the coming days, along with an application for parents to apply to have their child participate in virtual learning. So with the increase in COVID cases that we are seeing in our community and in our school system, we feel that we need to put in place protocols that will prevent Seguin ISD from closing a classroom, closing a school, or closing the school district. One of the things that we all have in common, we may have differences as far as how we feel about vaccinations or how we feel about masks, but one thing that I know we can all agree on is that we need to keep our schools open. If we keep our schools open, kids continue to learn, parents are able to go to work, and our employers are able to keep employees. When we close down a school or close down the school district, many times parents are forced to stay home with their children and can't go to work. So it has an impact on our economy as well. But most importantly, kids learn best with us in our classrooms, and we need them here every day. So in an effort to avoid getting to what you will see as a stage 3, we are looking to put in place measures to prevent us from closing a school. So here are the campus and district thresholds that we are going to be looking at. Currently, parents, Seguin ISD is in a stage 1, and every single campus is in a stage 1. And that means that the positivity rate is less than 5%. How do we figure out positivity rate? We look at the overall enrollment plus the number of staff, and then we look at the number of positive cases. We divide that number of positive cases by the total enrollment and staff number. So right now, for example, Barnes Middle School is at 4%, which is very close to stage 2, that 5%. Right now, masks are encouraged but not required. We quarantine siblings of close contacts who are in the same household. Again, masks are encouraged. Parents have the ability, just like we do, to monitor our COVID data every day. And now parents have the ability to be able to monitor campus by campus. However, if a campus hits above 5% for at least 2 consecutive days, and at an elementary school in a classroom where 25% of the students or more are confirmed positive, which equates to about 4 to 5 students, masks will be required for 7 school days or until that positivity rate drops below 5%, whichever is longer. This is in an effort to keep us from getting to stage 3. During stage 2, we'll continue short-term campus closures if needed. We will reduce attendance at after-school activities and go to 50%. So if a campus, let's say Barnes Middle School, becomes stage 2, we will limit capacity at a football game or volleyball game to 50%. If it's the high school, we will limit all activities to 50% attendance. Now, one of the things that we've noticed with Barnes is those numbers are leveling off at the 4%. And so we're hopeful, with more students being cautious and staff being cautious, that we will not get to that 5%. But if we get to the 5%, we have to keep our students and staff safe. What is the threshold for a school district or classroom closure? That would be a positivity rate that is above 10%. This means that we are so concerned about the spread in our school community that it is best to shut down. It is very likely that at this point, we are experiencing a hardship with staffing, limited staff to teach our students, limited substitute teachers to come in and step in. We are right now, in some instances, experiencing staffing challenges on some campuses because of COVID. If we're at that 10%, we are guaranteed to be experiencing staff challenges. Therefore, we would be looking at a campus closure for up to 7 days and a suspension of all extracurricular activities for that particular campus, or if it is district-wide, for the entire district. So what happens if we experience a school or classroom closure? Well, what you hear about many times in other districts is that campuses just shut down. There's no instruction happening. The Texas Education Agency has provided school districts with up to 20 days to provide remote conferencing. All of our schools have online platforms like Seesaw and Google Classroom to continue learning if we have to shut down. If a classroom shuts down at Kinnicky, 3rd grade, the teacher can do remote conferencing if he or she is well enough to do it. That is going to be key. If a school closes or the district, if we have staff who are not sick, we can continue with that remote conferencing so that we receive ADA and we do not have to make up the minutes. So it's going to be very situational when we do experience a closure. It's going to depend on how many are sick, if we have the ability to continue any type of instruction. Now, a school closure could possibly result in the need to make up instructional minutes. And in my communication last week, I shared that it could mean adding days to the school year. It could mean reducing our holidays such as Thanksgiving and spring break, but we are going to make every effort to maintain the current calendar that has been adopted for this school year. This does conclude the presentation, but I do want to close with just a message for our community to please continue to give one another grace, because times are very challenging. And I ask that we can just find a common ground, because right now things are so divisive. It's hard to find common ground. But I believe with these thresholds, we can meet in the middle to ensure that our schools stay open, that we can agree to a very temporary mask requirement at a particular campus only when it is needed. Because right now, what we're doing is working, because we are maintaining low percentages of active positive cases, while many of the school districts around us are far exceeding what we are seeing. And so I do ask that you consider wearing a mask, that you consider vaccinations, and that you please respect those who choose to wear a mask and respect those who choose not to wear a mask. But I do ask for your support if for some reason your child's classroom, grade level, campus, or the district has to go to a stage 2. We want to make every effort to keep our kids in school. Our kids suffered immensely last year academically because so many of them were in school, or so many of them experienced coming in and out of quarantine. So I ask the Seguin ISD community to please come together and support one another during these very challenging times. I do believe that we will get through the most challenging COVID times in the coming weeks, and then we'll get back to a sense of normalcy. I also encourage you to monitor those COVID numbers every single day. I know that together we are stronger, and I know that together we can overcome. Thank you all so much, and have a wonderful and safe weekend.